All right, let's dive into a hidden story from the history of computing. This is a tale of incredible innovation, a bit of corporate rivalry, and an operating system so ahead of its time, its DNA is probably still running on the very computer you're using right now.
I mean, it's a feature we totally take for granted today, right? Autocomplete is just everywhere. But what if I told you this idea isn't from the last 10 or even 20 years? Its roots go all the way back to 1969, and it was born out of a really, really big problem.
Okay, so picture this. It's the 1960s. The company is Bolt, Beranek, and Newman. We'll just call them BBN. They're doing all this groundbreaking work in artificial intelligence using a programming language called Lisp. But their amazing, ambitious programs were constantly slamming into a hard physical wall. So this number, 256 kilowords, you gotta understand, this was a total pipe dream back then. Early computers from a company called DEC had an 18-bit address space, which means, in theory, they could talk to that much memory. But the actual physical memory, that stuff was so incredibly expensive that the real machines had just a tiny, tiny fraction of that installed. So this was the central conflict, right? For developers like Daniel Murphy over at BBN, their AI programs were hungry. They needed huge amounts of memory to even function, but the hardware just wasn't there. They desperately needed a clever workaround, some way to trick the computer into thinking it had way more memory than it actually did. And this was the brilliant solution, virtual memory. Think of it like a librarian with a really small desk but a gigantic warehouse full of books. The librarian, that's the computer, only keeps the books you're actively reading right on the desk. That's your RAM. Everything else, it's stored out in the warehouse, which is your disk drive. A card catalog tells the librarian exactly where every single book is, so they can quickly swap them onto the desk when you need them. It's a trick that makes that tiny desk feel almost infinitely large. So BBN goes to the big computer manufacturer of the day, Digital Equipment Corporation, or DEC, with a proposal. They said, hey, build this hardware pager, our librarian, directly into your next big computer, the PDP-10. But DEC, they said no, flat out. They thought it was way too complicated, way too expensive. And that one single disagreement, well, it would change the entire course of operating system history. So DEC basically shuts the door in their face. And what does BBN do? They make this incredibly bold move. They decide, fine, if you won't build the hardware we need, we'll just build it ourselves. And, while they were at it, they figured they might as well write a whole new operating system from scratch to really take advantage of it. And voila! In 1969, TENEX is born. The name is short for 10 Extended, which is a little nod to the PDP-10 computer it was designed for. Its absolute killer feature was that it was built from the ground up to handle that virtual memory trick seamlessly. Every single program on the system could access that huge 256 kiloword address space all at the same time, and the programmers didn't even have to think about it. But here's the thing. The real revolution of TENEX wasn't just its clever memory management. It was designed from day one to be user-friendly. Now, in an era of super cryptic, complex commands, the very idea of making a computer's power easy to use was completely and utterly radical. I mean, just look at the difference here. A typical command on another system like Unix was short, cryptic, hard to remember. The TENEX way, it was a whole phrase. It used these long descriptive names and even had what they called noise words, like of files. Those words did absolutely nothing for the computer, but they made the command's purpose crystal clear to an actual human being. Now, obviously, nobody wants to type those long commands out every single time. So to fix that, TENEX introduced this feature that was pure magic. You type just a few letters, like DIR, you'd hit the escape key, and bam. The system would automatically complete the rest of the command for you. Sound familiar? Of course it does. This is the granddaddy of all the autocomplete we use today, in our search bars, our text messages, everywhere. So, as you can imagine, TENEX, with its powerful features and friendly interface, became wildly popular in the PDP-10 community. And this, of course, created a massive headache for the one company that had said no in the first place, DEC.
And things were really about to come to a boil. By the early 70s, DEC was developing a much, much faster processor, the KI-10. But here's the catch, and it's a huge one. They had designed it with their own much simpler memory management system, a system that was completely incompatible with the custom hardware pager that TENEX needed to run. So, can you see the dilemma here? It's huge. Your deck. You got this faster, better, brand new machine ready to go, but it can't run TENEX, the most popular, most beloved operating system on the market for your computers. They were stuck between a rock and a hard place. What do you do? So, what did they do? Well, they made a really, really smart move. The old saying, if you can't beat 'em, join 'em. DEC decided to buy them. They went and purchased the rights to TENEX directly from BBN and immediately kicked off a project to bring it over to their new hardware. The solution they came up with was just brilliant. Since they couldn't use BBN's physical hardware pager, DE's engineers wrote a piece of software that perfectly mimicked it. It was a software emulation. And this was only possible because that new KI-10 chip was so much faster than the old one. And get this, to help with the project, TENEX's original creator, Daniel Murphy, actually moved from BBN over to DEC. Inside DEC, this whole project was super hush-hush and went through a bunch of secret code names. First, it was Viros. Then it was Snark. For a little while, it was actually called Crayons, until someone, thankfully, pointed out that crayons is the Swedish word for wreath, like a funeral wreath. Yeah, probably not the best vibe for a new product launch. In the end, the official corporate-approved name they settled on was TOPS 20. But the user community, the hackers and programmers who actually used it, they knew where it came from. So they gave it this affectionate nickname, TENEX, a kind of mashup of 20 and TENEX. The name stuck, even though rumor has it that the executives at DEC cringed every time they heard it. So by the early 1980s, TOPS 20, or TENEX as everyone called it, was on top of the world. It was a massive success, incredibly popular, and it had this fiercely loyal fan base of programmers and academics who just loved its power and its elegant design. But its time on top didn't last long. See, TOPS 20 didn't die because it failed. Nope, it was killed by a corporate strategy shift. DEC decided to bet the entire company on a completely new line of computers called VAX, with its own operating system VMS. The D System 20 was just discontinued. And its loyal users, well, they eventually had to move on, most of them migrating over to another up-and-coming system, Unix. But hold on, the story isn't over. While all those user-friendly ideas from TENEX found a new life in systems like Unix, its older sibling, DEC's original TOPS 10 operating system, left an even more direct mark. Simple little things we take for granted, like 3-character file extensions, .exe, .txt, using the asterisk as a wildcard to select files, using a slash for command options. All of these conventions were adopted directly by a little system called MS-DOS, and through DOS, they became part of the very fabric of personal computing that we still use every single day. And that's just so cool, right? The next time your computer auto-completes a command or you double-click on a .exe file, you'll actually know the deep history behind it. And it really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other forgotten innovations like these are still out there, quietly shaping the world around us?